We all know Starbucks. We know Target. We know Disney. These are the brands we recognize the moment we walk in the door. And then they're the brands and the internet that nobody talks about. B2B e-commerce. A market already bigger than B2C by 5x. Expected to hit $3 trillion in the US by 2027. You know the feeling of walking into a stadium bathroom, waving your hand and the paper towel just appears, or checking into a hotel and the room is perfectly stocked, or sitting in a hospital where the nurse somehow never runs out of what they need. All of that feels automatic, but in reality, none of it's automatic. This is the system that shapes our world, even if we never see it. Behind every "of course this works" moment, there's a massive invisible tech stack humming in the background. Commerce engines, data pipes, supply chains, ERPs, and a lot of people trying to make sure the whole thing doesn't fall over when you hit that sensor. This is the story underneath the brands everyone knows. So joining us today are two leaders who live at the intersection of brand, operations, and the invisible tech that holds it all together. First, we have Daniele Tedesco, who runs global, digital, and commerce for Essity, the company behind Torque and a portfolio of health, hygiene, and professional products touching 1 billion people every day. With him is Dano from SAP, formerly the CIO of Campbell Soup North America, now working across CPG and retail to modernize the platforms that power everything from supply chains to customer experience. What I love about today's conversation is this. In brand-heavy companies, technology is often invisible until it fails. So how do you elevate tech from fix my laptop to fuel my growth? And that's what we're unpacking today. So I'm Jinx.
I'm Anish.
And this is The Art of Commerce. Let's get into it.
The Art of Commerce is a podcast featuring conversations on creativity and conversions. Hosted by Anish, a data-obsessed creative director, and Jinx, a growth-obsessed CMO. Listen on for actionable insights for the modern marketer.
John, Dan, so great to have you guys on the show.
It's a pleasure to be here, guys. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Awesome. And you guys are illustrious because we've never had two guests on at once. So this is a thrill for us.
Special episode.
Breaking ground. All right.
Exactly. John, you have a very varied background, and we talked about it kind of in the upfront, but can you tell our listeners a little bit about you and a little bit where you came from?
Sure. Yeah, it's definitely varied, right? I can go all the way back to I was a history major at the Virginia Military Institute, which is a military college, and strangely became a computer systems officer in the U.S. Air Force after that. So that was a bit of a leap, right? But I took a lot of leadership skills with me, and it made all the difference. But then I left the Air Force and started at Campbell Soup Company and had a long career there, almost 20 years, where I did pretty much almost everything you can do in the technology space, from managing all of our end user experience to more business facing roles. I was the IT lead for our global Walmart team. I was the head of IT for supply chain, for sales, for marketing. And then I moved into more leadership spaces where I was the CIO of our food service business for a time, and also the CIO of our Campbell North America business, which was our largest business at a time. But what I do now is I'm an industry advisor for consumer products at SAP, which is really, honestly, a really fun role, right? Because I get to meet with CPG leaders all across North America, right? And to really work with them on technology strategy and how to really drive digital transformation, right? I'm an advisor to them. I'm an advisor back to SAP in terms of how to think about consumer products. It's a really, really fun job. It's how I met Dan. I'm really, really blessed to be able to tell some of those stories and get into it with you guys today.
Oh, that's awesome. And before we unpack all of those exciting stories in your time at SAP, Good. You were the VP of IT for Campbell Soup North America. You guys make awesome soups, but what does a VP of IT do at a soup company? Tell us more about that.
Yeah. Okay. Campbell's is a brand company, right? They focus on brands. They make a lot of diverse types of brands, snacks, simple meals, beverages, and then they manufacture those products. So that's really the principle of who they are in kind of delighting consumers with their products. The IT leadership role in that space is really holistically responsible for all things technology, defining and executing on strategy that enables the business strategy. So really aligning with your business leadership partners to make sure that you're making the right investments and the right capabilities to drive their strategic plan and their annual plans. But it's also, you have to make sure you're creating a secure environment, an information and systems environment, reliable level of service, right? High performance of all of your systems, right? The user experience is key. And when you think about being a CIO and leading an IT function, my consumers are were the employees of Campbell Soup Company. Right? Mm-hmm. They're consuming the services and the capabilities that I'm providing. So in a sense, you're almost the general manager of the IT brand, right? So to speak, right? And quite frankly, it's a fight, right? I mean, nobody celebrates when stuff works in technology, right? But they're sure are there when it isn't, right? When it doesn't work. And you have to be able to really fight for respect and a seat at the table with these business leaders, with whatever circumstance is going on. And sadly, that can be walking into a business leadership team where you're about to propose a pretty significant investment for an application set. And somebody says, "Hey, my laptop's not working," or the conference room tech that you're in is not working, and like, "Hey, can you help?" And I mean, the reality is listen, that's part of the brand that you're representing. So you have to be able to address those problems or have the mechanism at the ready to address those problems quickly, so that you can focus on the things that really help drive the business. But you own it all, right? From the most simplest basic problem to a very complex implementation of capability, from ERP to commercial systems and all the rest. So you really, it's foundation, but it's also everything in between. But you really have to think about not taking anything for granted. Service and the brand reputation of IT is always at stake.
Wow. I mean, when I'm buying soup off the shelves like a supermarket and enjoying it, it's like soup season now, it's winter. I never think about all the things that go behind the scenes to make it possible for me to pick it up at a random mountain town grocery store somewhere in Colorado. So that's awesome. Thank you for shedding some light on that.
Yeah, and the interesting part, Anish, is like John's whole role also was like to elevate that, because even the people within Campbell's don't even know necessarily all the stuff. And so
we do have an unsung hero of sorts.
There you go. But I'm saying terrible pun, but he had everything from soup to nuts, from an IT perspective.
That's a very fair analogy, right? That's very fair.
But anyway, well, so that's awesome, John. So Dan, tell us a little bit about your story, and then tell us how you and John connected.
Sure. Yeah. So my background is always been at the intersection of business and technology, if that's innovation or technology. I've been very close to try to always stay close to the customer. So early in my career, I'm a mechanical engineer. I did a lot of product design. I have patents on military vehicles, landmine detonators, medical devices, and latest napkin dispensers and paper towel dispensers. So really find a lot of passion in breaking down what is the problem here, asking the 5 whys, and translating that. So at Essity, I started in product design, got my MBA with you, Jinx, and then moved to business strategy. And now, since in that strategy role, got exposure to digital transformation. And really in the past 5 years and 6 years now, helped shape and bring to life the different pockets of CX at Essity, and it's been a great journey. And we met at a customer event in the beautiful Hudson Yards office in New York City, and we immediately bonded over this this challenge of like being in the corner and kind of fighting against marketing and brands, and not fighting against, but being the sparring partner, I guess, is a better usage of that term. And just trying to bring these initiatives to life, where there's all these other competing investments, right? For us, it's investing in a paper machine, napkin converting machine, or a whole new brand like we just recently bought Playtex. So we're not a digitally native company, right? And that's the interesting part about CX at a manufacturer.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And coming from telco and financial services before that, I know exactly what you're talking about. Where they're not digital native companies, and so I actually entered those companies to try to help them raise the game a little bit. And I love that what you just said around it is a fight sometimes with between marketing and tech, but the sparring partner one is really good because in when you have a sparring partner, you both get better, right? A fight is you're both going to get hurt. But a sparring partner is you're actually going to get better and you're going to up the game of both. And you're actually going to use that healthy tension to create really great products and really great experiences. So I love that analogy. So why don't you take us a click deeper, Dan? And so what does digital CX look like at Essity?
Yeah. So a little background on Essity, not a household brand, but we are a health and hygiene company. And what that means is product categories from incontinence, paper towels, to wound care and compression garments. So we're in your hospitals, your schools, your airports. You said it in the beginning. It touches my heart every time I think about it. We serve 1 billion people every day. So 1/9 of the world's population is using and touching our product every day. And when you think about that and wrap your head around that, you like just the magnitude of that, you need a really robust omni-channel strategy. Our primary go-to-market is going to be our big distribution partners, our retail partners, but we also need to have a robust indirect and direct strategy. And that's where I've been putting a lot of my focus. And yeah, what does CX look like? It looks like servicing the entire value chain from retail partner, distributor partner to end customer, having a really robust experience that, nowadays a professional buyer, someone who's working at a distributor, a paper company, they expect a consumer experience because we're all using Amazon. We're all using these really modern platforms in our personal lives. They want that same experience when they have to make a professional purchase.
Oh, sweet. I had no idea the scale at which you impact people's lives across the world. Again, can you tell us what does a day in the life look like for someone in your position? And also tell us, was there a specific business problem that kicked off this digital transformation for the company? So it's like a 2-part question.
Sure. Yeah. So in our current strategy or approach, we've been looking at modernizing our platforms, right? So Essity is an innovation company. We also have grown through acquisition. So behind the scenes, we have this kind of quilt work, which I think is very common for a lot of B2B, talking to a lot of peers, B2B companies, is you have this quilt work of this digital ecosystem that's very scattered and fragmented, right? So come COVID and pre-COVID, we had this ambition to drive harmonization. And really what my goal is every day when I think about how do I serve our customers, like John said, how do we serve the internal customers, is through speed, streamline, and seamless. We want to create a seamless experience for our end customer as well as our brands. We want to have speed to market for new products and new regions. And then we want to streamline our processes, right? Let the business focus on what they're good at, which is that really customer-facing engagement, and let us focus on the behind the scenes. Yeah, and just to touch on your other question around what does our professional buyer look like? These individuals are very task oriented, right? They're very time sensitive. They have a pallet that they need to order, or maybe they need a truckload and they need to fill their floor. And they're dealing with dozens, if not hundreds of other suppliers like us, right? So we are very sensitive to that fact. And we keep in mind the idea that, what are their actual needs, and not going above and beyond and above and beyond that.
John, that brings us to, so how does SAP fit in here? You talked earlier about brands and their front end, but the common things that happen behind the scenes. So how does SAP fit into all the stuff that Dan just talked about?
Yeah, I think it's there's a couple core principles, right? One is integration into other dependent systems, data consistency, governance, and scale, quite honestly, right? So when you think about consumer products, in this space, in the B2B space, and what Dan's brand teams need, but also what Essity needs, is a consistent modern experience at scale, while keeping like supply chain, pricing, contracts, financial controls kind of tightly governed, right? And that's some of the elements that SAP brings to the table, right? Obviously, S/4HANA is the single system of record. You're talking about real-time order to cash and fulfillment type capability, pricing, promotions, contracts, right? So all of these pieces, there's an interdependency with your ERP S/4HANA system in this case, which Essity uses, that really is the core transactional system, but also that system of record of data. And that tight integration, how it's governed, the data it produces, and quite frankly, its ability to do it across multiple brand spectrums within Essity, I think creates a tremendous, value differentiation.
Yeah. So is it like, for the layperson, is it almost like a center point of a bunch of different data sets, and almost like a referee of like, this is actually the source of truth? Is that kind of the way to think about it?
100%. It's definitely your source of truth, and it's the extension of that source of truth, and a model of consistency across all these different systems or processes that are performing the B2B model, right? So having a standard foundation, right, allows you to scale significantly versus every brand doing a point solution that produces its own data that's disconnected to everything else. And then for that marketer, that's a quick win, but then it really, the value ends sharply, right? Versus being able to extend across the full spectrum of their business horizon, which I think is really valuable. So yeah, it's the glue that's connecting everything.
And maybe to add a real world example to that, we have sales in Canada, and we have a business in Canada. So one of our business units was like, why can't we launch, commerce? And the behind, the front of the office answer to the marketing team was, well, we can't offer a credit card. Well, behind the scenes, what was happening was you didn't have this integrated solution that could provide and do the order capture and do the reconciliation, and it added all this extra risk, right? So when we launched our shop, we rolled out to Canada. We were able to roll out to Canada quickly, and so the internal folklore, if you will, is like, oh, we couldn't offer a credit card, and now we can. But behind the scenes is all this really complex thing, right? That it's hard to explain the integration, the needs, the security behind financial captures.
And that's the fight. That's the fight for respect, right? Right. It's that interaction. I had many interactions in my career with marketers, right? And it's like, well, I want to use this. And it's like, well, there's a bigger picture underneath it, right? A more strategic picture that may not be specifically important to your specific brand, but it's important to the overall TCO of the company, right? In terms of being able to deliver capability. So that's that kind of wrestling match that I think Dan was talking about earlier.
Yeah. And so I'm so glad you just said that, because look, I'm guilty of it. So on the marketing side, because we're like, we want to move fast. We're going to want to let's get it out there. Let's do this. But actually, sometimes you'll actually get more speed. I think, Dan, that's what you were saying. Like once you actually had the system, you have the systems, we can port it over pretty quickly. But if marketing goes off the rails and does something different, it actually not only may not be as quick, but it certainly doesn't integrate into what everything else is doing. And then that's a disservice to the business as a whole, right?
Also, there's a good chance that whatever problem your business unit is trying to solve, other business units are probably facing the same problem, and having a unified tech stack or one system to solve it for everyone is just a better way of doing things. And that's where experts like John and can come in. John, I love what you said about that fight for respect, and also you started off this episode by we're talking about how a lot of conversations would just be about that tension, that sparring between marketing and technology, and how you sort of change your perception from, oh, you are IT, can you help me fix my technology? Can you help me fix my laptop? To, hey, let's talk about unified tech stacks. Let's talk about journey. I love the word Dan used, harmonization, right? Like how do you sort of bridge that gap and command respect from the business side of things so that everyone understands the perspective that you bring to the table. Everyone sees the value that you're trying to advocate for.
Yeah, it reminds me of something that I probably should have said when you asked what does a CIO do for a food company is, and this goes beyond the CIO, goes to every IT leader that's lining up with a function. So we're talking about marketing right now. So there's a marketing technology lead. You have to understand the business processes of multiple functions within the company of a food company, as an example. You need to understand supply chain. You need to understand marketing. You need to understand sales. And you need to understand the cross-functional nature of the interdependencies of those processes and the information that flows with them, right? So if you show up and you're an order taker, that, hey, I'm here for IT, what do you need? That marketer is going to tell you everything that they need the way they want it, right? And you don't want that, right? What you want is someone that says, hey, listen, I've really spent the time and to really understand the process flow of how you operate, how you commercialize a product from beginning to all the way to the shelf, right? From idea to shelf, right? Understanding that the different processes is kind of the first key so that you can actually speak their language, right? And in marketing, especially, that's typically a more tech savvy business partner, right? So they can speak a little bit of yours, but where the gap is really in the architectural stuff that we were just talking about that's underneath, right? And the value of being able to have that common backbone and the same data framework, et cetera, right? So I think, one, you got to earn their respect by understanding what they do, right? And really understanding the interdependencies of the processes that go beyond them, right? And two, when Dan was just talking, I was thinking to myself, okay, yeah, what they built for Essity still has to be secure. It still has to be reliable. Stuff's got to work, man, right? And that's the bare bones tax of this whole thing is you have to have the credibility, whether it's somebody's laptop, right, or it's a SAP Commerce Cloud connecting to your S/4HANA ERP. Like, the stuff's got to work, right? And that ultimately builds a lot of credibility to the relationship, to be able to build the trust, because ultimately it really ends up being about trust. I need my marketing business partner in this example to trust me that I understand what they're trying to do, that the services I can provide are reliable, and I can get to them rather quickly. Now, it's not going to be quicker than them just pulling something down from wherever, right? But that's only going to take them so far, like I said earlier. But it's building credibility through reliability, through good ideas, through understanding their business processes, and helping them understand the greater value of something that maybe is a little more broad than what that acute solution that they'd love to implement.
Yeah. No, I'd love, whenever we have these interviews, like we talked to somebody that was running an AI company we said, what's the biggest thing you think about AI and what do you need? And he said, honesty. And like, it blew our minds. We're like, oh, we didn't think about it. Like, you talking about IT layers and enabling marketing, but it really, like, in the foundational piece of it is trust.
Yeah,
is like so key. And I just wanted to linger on that for a minute, because you made a really good point where you're like, I need to learn the language of marketing. And what I tried to reinforce, and Anish can attest to this with the teams, is as marketers, we need to learn the language of tech, and we need to learn how to create business requirements, not try to solution or say, I have this tech and let's bring it in. Because back to even what Dan said about, when you kind of go rogue and they don't connect, that's not going to be helpful. But if we know what you're working on, we have that trust together. John, these are the things we need to do. Here are my requirements. And then we have the trust for you guys to go back and say, okay, great. We know how to get it done. And here's the playbook, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It goes both ways, right? And, just like I need to understand them, like they need to understand that they can't just acquire something and then say, okay, IT, go figure out how to make it work, right? That's not a good relationship, right?
Yeah.
Because then you have a silo of data out here and it's like, okay, well, IT, just figure out how to connect it to your overall data lake or what, that's your job, right? But if they understand the complexity or at least understand the architectural principles of how to make this stuff work as a whole, it'll make for a more trusting relationship and honestly just more productive, and you'll bring things to market a whole lot quicker.
One of my earliest lessons was I'm not a technologist. I should not try to be a technologist. I should just try to articulate the business value and the problem I'm trying to solve for, and lean on the experts in the room to advise on this is how you go fix it. Because unless I'm, as a marketer, I'm able to illustrate, hey, this is the problem, this is the gap, let's bridge it together. You can't really collaborate, and then you end up in a similar situation of, hey, this is a solution I think will work, go make this work. Or the other way sometimes when IT buys the product and you're like, hey, we bought this, now go and make this work. And I'm like,
It's both ways. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think one thing John told me early on was, being that empathetic voice, right? I think you talked about, John, you talked about going around the world and changing basic infrastructure for these teams, and they're immediately on the defensive, right? And I think a lot of your listeners who are kind of at this crossroad role, right, of translating needs, being the empathy in the room of okay, let's dig a little deeper, and then you find out actually you don't need a tool, you need a little help strengthening your business case or strengthening your go to market. Right. And it's not going to fix. It's not a fix all. Just implementing a new thing.
Now that's a great point that you brought up, because early in my career, and I credit a former boss of mine, a guy named Mike Gerisi, who's been a CIO all over the place, and we had to go all across the globe, right, to get standardized the foundational end user experience technologies like the Microsoft stack, everything, right, because everybody in every country did it different. And we traveled all over the place. And, being a history major background, I'm not the tech guy that was actually changing the stuff. But I had to go in there and meet with these businesses and these different IT teams and just build trust, because I was an advisor to them. But hey, listen, I know you can do it this way, but there's a bigger value doing it in a more standard, comprehensive way across the company. Right. So that kind of trust building piece and being an advisor to them, not just going in there and saying, well, I'm from corporate and this is how it's going to be. It just doesn't work that way, because users will reject technology for one reason or another. So it's about being an advisor, establishing the trust, getting them to be an advocate for you for the change.
A lot of change management undercurrents behind your technical advice.
I know, I'm just writing it all down. Empathy, trust. Like, we thought we were in an IT commerce conversation, man. We're getting psychology here. That's great.
But this is the art of commerce. This is the tech of commerce, and we decode these things, and eventually you realize, it's just being a nice person. It's being empathetic and trying to solve real problems.
When it all comes down to it, it's always a human problem. It's a human element, right? Yeah.
That's right.
This is The Art of Commerce, featuring conversations on creativity and conversions. If you found value in today's episode, follow the show, leave a review, and stay tuned for more insights for the minds reshaping modern marketing.